I think Jimmy Buffett had the best job in the world. I don't think there's anybody who had a better job than Jimmy Buffett. Teaching wine, traveling, meeting new people of all experiences, brand new to Masters of Wine, the Institute of Masters of Wine. It's always a fun experience. It never gets old. It never gets boring. And somebody pointed out last night, they said, you teach that class and you were the only one in that room not trying the Grand Cru Champagnes. I said, well, I usually have to drive back to a hotel, but it's more fun for me just watching everybody try different wine. They may never have had a rosé before Champagne, and they may never known the grapes of Pinot Noir can also make a white wine. So we talked about all those fun things. Just seeing people get it and knowing when they leave, they're going to try new experiences and new foods, because we put a lot of food pairing in there too, and mostly to get them comfortable. So the key word is, and our first slide is enjoyment. That's what it's all about. It's about enjoyment, about sharing and talking about it. So.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Barrels and Roots podcast. I've got an awesome guest with me today that I would love for you guys to learn more about. Can you tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Sure. My name is Robert Cavanaugh. I'm the CEO of Adventure Wine. We do a lot of staff training, live events, in-store tastings for retailers, restaurants, and mostly we represent wine regions from around the world.
That's awesome. How did you get started down this path, Robert? Because it's a really interesting path to me. What was it that kind of kicked off this catalyst and got you down going down this direction?
Well, I've been studying wine. I grew up overseas. I grew up in Europe, so I was exposed to wine long before I could even drink wine. Came back to the U.S. for college, started managing hotels, primarily Ritz-Carlton hotels in New York City and Palm Beach, and then two gentlemen named David and Robert Trone from a small little company called Total Wine asked me to be their corporate wine buyer back in 2001. And so I had a chance to start there and made contacts both on-premise and off-premise. And over the years, I just really gravitated towards training and teaching. So much so that Ritz-Carlton and Total Wine are still two of my clients all these years later.
That's awesome. One of the things too, I started podcasts because podcasting for me, I used to be a teacher and I taught for many years, and yet I always had a media side hustle, but then my media business took off and I wanted an outlet for continuing to teach. And I grew up when I was in high school, early high school, like my freshman, sophomore year, my parents moved up to the Napa Valley to work at a university there. So I got to be around wine country, and it was this amazing immersion experience about being around wine and winemakers and just everything wine related. But it was really cool because there was this time where I got to experience things with like this open mind, this beginner's mind, this mushin, like the beauty of being able to be in there and to experience something for the first time. And one of the things too is I say, as people are coming to wine, I would love for everyone to be able to have that lightheartedness, that joy that I had of being able to find that. But I wanted to ask you this because you've been working around wine for a long time. And if someone walked into a wine shop and said, I don't get wine at all, where would you start them with it,
Well, I would start them with styles. I mean, this is such an overwhelming industry, and
it is.
It's huge. I mean, I feel the same way when I walk into a lot of craft brew shops. I'm like, there's 7 whole collections. I've never heard of 99% of them. Right. But I would say start with styles. Try reds versus whites, and then maybe Chardonnays versus Pinot Grigios, and then Pinot Noir versus Syrah, things like that. And very quickly, you'll find out what you like and what you gravitate towards, and then always just keep trying different styles, keeping an open mind. That's the key. I wish I would have learned that early on. I was trying to do everything at once, and that's like running a marathon with no training.
Right. It is. One of the things too that I found is that there's a lot. And like, I have a wine podcast. I grew up in wine country in the US, and I have a very American experience about wine. Now, what's wild is that as I'm living overseas now, I'm trying to interact with European wines and Australian wines and New Zealand wines and Argentinian and Chilean. And as I was looking at wines, like California has this thing where, the US wine is very much grape centric. Like you have the varietal. And like, so, when you buy a bottle, it's a bottle of Merlot or it's a bottle of Cab. And when I was
Mhm.
looking at European wines, and this was just recently that I was like figuring this out, I have a wine podcast. And that's the embarrassing part, but like for people that feel overwhelmed, like, well, you go and it's Burgundy. Well, how does that equate to what you're getting here? And like, here's the wild thing. I grew up in wine country and I didn't ever ask that question. Like
Yeah.
that's the wild part. And you feel embarrassed about asking those questions. And I think that like what I want to do is normalize having people as they come in go, yeah, it's okay to ask these questions. It's okay to
Oh,
not know these
sure.
things,
Yeah,
you
don't be
know?
embarrassed, be curious. I mean, that's
Right?
and what you mentioned is that's a huge hurdle. Understanding the regional names versus the varietal names. If we did it the other way around, we'd be having a glass of Napa, not a glass of Chardonnay. And things like
Yep.
that. Instead of understanding that some places name them after the region or the village or the appellation, and some name them after the variety it comes from. So took a long time to learn that. So
Right? I'm so
I
embarrassed
even
by
put
how long it took
slides,
me.
my beginner slides, which I still use every night when I'm teaching. I said, this is the alias box. It may be Chenin Blanc here in one country, it may be Steen in something else, but it comes from another area. It can be very confusing. Why is Syrah called Syrah in the Rhone Valley and Shiraz down under? But
Right.
in California, it might be Petit Syrah, and that's a totally different grape. So it's hard to keep them straight, but once you unlock it, it's much easier.
Right.
So
And see, that's the beauty of, and it's like, we both, I'm going a little bit of a tangent direction, but I love when you message me and you're like, hey, we both have a martial arts background. Do you know what movie started me? And I'm going to say it. I'm not embarrassed to say it. I got started, though I love the old Kung Fu movies. I love the old samurai movies. I got into them later on. But the movie that got me going was Karate Kid. Ralph Macchio.
it got a whole, not just one generation, but multiple generations, and now it's come back again.
It's
My
come back again.
14-year-old son he knows more about Cobra Kai than I did when I was his age, and it's just fantastic.
I love it.
I think it's a great thing, and there are a lot of things kids can get into, but I will never steer a kid away from the martial arts. That was life
Right.
changing. I would
Well,
say martial arts and growing up in Europe were two of the biggest influences of my life.
I love that.
So
And one of the things too with the martial arts too, I as well, it shaped me so profoundly. One of the things too, like when you're getting into a martial art, there is this whole area of not knowing. And it's okay to not know. And it's the most important thing that you learn is to ask questions. And like, that whole Mr. Miyagi, you have that teacher who guides you. And
mhm.
that's one of the things that I think for me was so helpful as I got into it. My first great teacher was Dan Linder. He was a
Uh-huh.
jujitsu. I studied Japanese style jujitsu, which is much more akin to judo than BJJ. So it's a
Uh,
very throw based. And my teacher, Dan, was just an absolutely stellar human being, absolutely amazing teacher. And he guided me. And he guided me through this experience that was very overwhelming in the beginning. And I want to ask you this because as people enter the world of martial arts or enter the world of wine, they can feel intimidated. And
Yeah.
and I want to ask you, why do you think people feel so intimidated? And is that something the industry accidentally created, or is it just something that goes back way, way, way back in time?
I don't know I'm pretty sure it wasn't deliberate. But when you look at a wine label and it can literally be Greek to you, it 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 doesn't help. There are so many
Right.
different regions and so many different styles, and yes, it is very intimidating until you step back and realize that it's supposed to be fun. At the end of the day, wine is supposed to be enjoyable. It's meant to be shared and discussed and emptied often. So that's what you want to look at when you look at a wine bottle. So um,
Right.
I would say just step back and enjoy it for what it is, and it's fun.
I had a really cool experience the other day where I was hanging out with non-wine people, people that were not wine people, people that were just experimenting and they were trying things. And they got out a bottle of red. It was a red blend from Australia. And then they were like, hey, and they were mixing it with like soda water, making their
Mhm.
own homemade sangrias. And I was just like, are you sure about this? I was just like, part of me was like, is this the right way to do it? But then they're like, try it. I tried it and I was like, that was phenomenal. And one of
Yeah,
the things too is I think that like it's not the right way, but I think finding people who can allow you to go, all right, well, maybe that's not the way that we normally do it, but here's how you can try it, and here's how you're going to do. And like food and wine pairings, one of the things that you have to do that I think is just try stuff. I had a red blend tonight, and I had some sushi, and I found out one really interesting thing. That wine and that food did not go well together. It was horrible. It was a horrible pairing. But I think that one of the things that in the past I might feel too intimidated to try it. And tonight, one of the things with all of my guests come in and say, try it out, try out the wine, see what it's like, and see, how your palate reacts to it. And I think that's one of the things that you gotta get your palate engaged.
yeah. And well, and I think that you made a good point there. First of all, there are very few bad wine and food pairings. There may be some that are better than others. I mean,
Yeah,
protein and tannin are a really nice match together. Acidity and tomato sauce, they're a really good match, and that covers a whole bunch of different foods. Butter goes great with certain wines and not so well with others. But in general, most wine and food pairings are pretty good. The few bad ones, they'll let you know. But in general, just relax. 98% of the time, you're going to have a great time. I did a cover story for a food and wine magazine, and one of my staff members said, I'll bet nobody knows that you were having wine and nacho chips when you wrote that. I said, well, that's fine.
oh, I gotta ask, what wine pairs with nachos? What were you doing with nachos?
What
Tell
wine
me.
doesn't pair with nachos? I mean, come on.
Right.
I'm currently right now, I'm in Virginia. Last week I was in North Carolina. Um, uh, and as far as taking the snobbery out of wine, that was my whole point. I'm in a
That's awesome.
hotel room right now. If I could tell you how many times I had a great bottle of Bordeaux with a hotel room plastic cup, you'd be amazed. I don't travel with crystal glasses. So sometimes it's about having fun. It's the experience. A
Yeah,
good
I love
bottle
that.
of wine with a great group of people is a great experience. So
Yeah. I love that, man. I absolutely love that. When you're teaching someone about wine, what's the first thing you want them to feel, not learn, you know?
to just trust their palate. If I say it, I've written it, I've broadcasted it, I say it almost every night in my seminars. If you like it, it's a good wine. I'm not as impressed about price or points or sometimes even the region. I'm more curious if you like this wine, it's really good. You could have a Domaine de la Romani Conti and not enjoy it. That's okay. I'm not a big fan of caviar. That doesn't mean that I have terrible taste in food. It means I would just prefer something else. So try different wines. And if you like it, if you're happy with what you paid for it, that's good. Now on to the next bottle. Try something new and just keep trying because you'll never finish it. You'll never master wine. So
Right. I think that's a good thing to realize. And you don't have to. You can be, one of the things as a martial artist, that I've realized is that I'm actually quite good. I got my black belt in Danzanru Jiu Jitsu. I've been training Muay Thai for 10 years. If someone came up to me on the street and wanted to start something, I would be okay. Like, that's okay, and I know that. But if I wanted to go to the UFC, no, man, there's no way. I'm not a professional MMA fighter. And that's okay. It's okay to be on your journey. It's okay to go in, and when I train now, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that I don't want to train like I used to. I want to
mhm.
train for health. I want to train for wellness. I go in, like I sprained my wrist the last time I went in. So tonight I took it easy. Tonight I did cardio and rested and focused on just what is experientially fun for me. And I think that's the thing too, is like get out and try stuff and enjoy it. Like with wine, are you, so it's really interesting that I find people that they create these wine identities for themselves. You're like, well, I drink Pinot. I'm a cab guy. And at the end of the day, like, well, why are you always drinking that? And I ask a lot of people, have you tried these other wines? And one of the funniest things is like, well, no, because I really enjoy this. I was like, well, how can you say that you're a cab person when you haven't tried these other
Yeah.
things? And so, I like trying to get people out of the box. But you've done this for 30 plus years. What actually makes a wine experience fun instead of boring?
Well, first of all, a good corkscrew can eliminate all chances of boredom. A good corkscrew, get that wine open. But honestly, I think one of the best things is just the people that you're around, whether they're beginners or experts. I put quotations around experts because I just think everybody should try different wines. I don't think I've ever had a boring experience with wine. And I do this every night. Every night, it's a different group of people. Some know a lot about wine and they're fun to talk about on one level, and others are just beginning. And quite honestly, I like that probably even more because they're experiencing something. It's something new to them, and you can literally see it in their eyes. Are like, now I get it. Now I understand how balance and sweetness and acidity and tannin all work together. And at the end of the day, I'm going to ask the same question. Did you like the wine? If
Yep,
not,
that's
you
it.
got 77,000 others for you to try. So,
Right. I love that. I love it. And it's like, I had this one wine that someone poured for me once, and they're like, this is one of the finest wines that we've ever had. And I tasted it and I didn't like it. And my friend pulled me aside, and it was a really expensive bottle. And I was just like, I don't know why. I feel bad. I feel shame. I wanted to cry. I don't like this wine. And I said, it's so expensive, and I know it's so supposed to be so great. My friend looked at me and he's like, that's okay. It's okay
yeah.
that you don't like it. It's like some people like chocolate, some people don't, and that's okay. It's what you like. And the joy is more tonight. My family, we just had a great dinner, and I had a great red wine blend, super light, super chill. But you know what? The red wine blend was so. It wasn't great. But you know what was great? It was the fact that we were all drinking it together, and that we
Yeah.
had this lovely dinner, and that we got to spend that time together. And that was what was really special for me. My
Oh,
wife
yeah.
and my sister-in-law are still texting me right now while I'm in this podcast going, what a fun conversation. And that to me is special. But I want to ask you too, what's one of your favorite and most special memories around wine?
Oh, geez. I'll give you one kind of similar to what we're talking about. On Sunday, I was in Ocean Isle, North Carolina. I'd never been to Ocean Isle before. It was just one of those perfect days. And we did a upscale Medoc seminar, the great wines of Pauillac and Margaux and Saint Estèphe. And afterwards, we sat outside of the winery that was hosting it. And I had a $9 bottle of Picpoul de Pinet that Frank Casella brings in. And it was just such a glorious bottle of wine. We had just tried $100 bottles of deep, rich, red, full bodied wines, but I was having so much fun with the people there. There was a guitarist there, and I see all the guitars in the background, and I was able to speak his language a little bit. We ended up getting in a whole side conversation about the Eagles and all the different great guitarists, Joe Walsh. And it was
Ah,
just such a fun time. So I had half, just it was the experience. It wasn't even necessarily the wine. The wine was fantastic, and it was $9 a bottle. And it was just the people and the winery and the weather and the music. That for me is what the wine industry is all about. So,
I
you know,
am in the same boat with you, man. I want to ask you this because if a restaurant or wine shop wanted to make people care more about wine, what's one simple thing they could do better?
just enjoy the experience of wine and food together. How wine complements food, and take away all the Fraser Crane nervousness about wine and food pairing. Don't be so uptight about it. Try a different wine. Try a high tannin red with a little bit of protein or cheese or stews or something like that. maybe a spicy Syrah with something right off the grill and see how they work together. And you like it or you won't. So try different wine and food pairings. I used to think when I was studying wine, everybody was saying turkey and Pinot Noir was just the no brainer. And I was like, I really like this Gewürztraminer with turkey.
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong is what I felt back in the 90s. I said, what am I doing wrong? And now it's like, well, of course, Gewürztraminer goes with turkey. Just try different things. And again, trust your palate. You'll know if you like it or if you don't. That's why a lot of the times I won't even tell people the prices of the wines. We did a Grand Cru seminar last night in Virginia, and I didn't want to tell people this is a $209 bottle of champagne because everyone would say this is the best champagne. When in
Right.
fact, I think the most popular one was the $56 Grand Cru Brut Reserve. So people enjoyed it, and that's what we want.
See, that's the thing. I remember so many times that you get some product or thing that just gets this buzz, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's the best." But the reality is like if you don't tell people what to think and they go in and they just get their own experience, it's like often a more clear and true uh, representation of what they truly
And
like. And there was a friend of mine was telling me about a beer here in Vietnam, and it was a chocolate beer,
Mhm.
and I tried it, and it was one of the most delicious things I've ever had. And I was like, and then my friend was like, I don't really like this, and I was like, wow, I did, and am I wrong for liking it? Is it is this something that I did wrong, or am I? But at the end of the day, I think that it's just like, yeah, get out and experience and try stuff. And it led me to this thought, like, too, because like people might try to get into wine, but they feel like they don't know things and they're making mistakes. What's the biggest mistake that people make when they're getting into learning about wine?
Probably exactly what you said, that they feel nervous, they feel like they're making a mistake, that what's wrong with me? I like this $9, $10 wine better than I like the $40, $50 wine. There is nothing wrong. That's your palate right now. I remember very clearly, I had a great first teacher. Kevin Zraly was my very first teacher back in 1993 at the World Trade Center in New York. And I remember the day I moved from a particular jug wine, which I won't say the name, which was a very good jug wine. You can still get it today, to a Trimbach Riesling. And I remember he just kind of nodded. He goes, "Now you're getting it. Now you're trying different things." So I said, "Well, I want to branch out more and learn all about this." So
I love that. I remember the first car I had. It was a beat up Subaru 1986 Subaru GL wagon. And it was beat up. And it was not beat up
as
the way
all
you
of
think,
our,
but it was old. It was just really old. But you know what? That was my favorite car. And up to that point, it was the best car I had ever driven. And I
yeah,
didn't know that it was an old, beat up Subaru. I didn't know that it was secondhand and it didn't have all of these bells and whistles, didn't have air conditioner, didn't have power steering. But yet it was my favorite car to drive. And the fact that it was mine made it all the better. And then I
that
got to try to drive other cars. One time, drove my friend's nice Toyota, and I was like, "Wow, this is much nicer." I do my other friend's Honda Accord. I like this better, but I still loved my Subaru, just in a different way. And I think
yeah,
that was one of the things too. Is like as you start, like you say, as you start broadening your experience, your palate, your awareness of what's out there gets deeper. And I think that just being patient with that process is a really good thing. And I think that's one of the powers of getting out and doing tastings.
yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And as far as whether people would say that they are experts in wine, they can say that. That's up to them. I kind of like looking at the guitars in your background. I kind of like what Eddie Van Halen used to say. He did not want to be called the greatest guitarist in the world. He goes, because that means I have nowhere to go. I want to keep moving up, trying new things, experimenting with new pickups and bridges and things like that, and just trying new sounds and techniques. That I thought was one of the greatest, from someone who is, arguably one of the greatest ever. That I thought was a refreshing attitude. Keep trying new things, whatever the discipline may be, whether it's martial arts or music or love of cars or wine or food. I don't know of any chef that would say that they know it all. Any chef that, when we used to train black belts, we would say, when they would get their first degree, we would say, okay, you're allowed to feel happy for all week. You got the whole week to enjoy that black belt that you've worked for years to get steady through the ranks. And then you come back and you start on your second degree. Because if you
Yep.
think you know all, you're right. You're done. You're done knowing it all. So keep learning.
I love that. I love that because you're right. Like at the end of the day, it's about getting back in and trying that experience. The experience of learning, of being open to something new, because the something new is that you are continuously opening doors and seeing what's out there.
Mm.
And to me, that's awesome. I want to ask you this one too, because when I think about wine, I have a much more amateur experience, but like when you're hosting tasting or events, what's something that you do that most people wouldn't notice but makes a huge outcome?
Something they wouldn't notice, the temperature of the wine. People tend to drink their whites and especially their rosés a little too cold. So we'll
Mm.
take the wines out a little bit. We'll just let the temperature come up a little bit. And the reds, we do just the opposite. The average room temperature is 70, 71 degrees. As soon as we get people in any seminar room, the temperature goes up a bit. So we may cool the reds down just a little bit, just a tad. And people say, boy, there's just something about it. And they almost always look at the glass. They say, it must be the glass. Like, no, it's the temperature of the wine. We want you to be able to taste the rosé, taste what you're getting in that glass, taste what you're getting out of the white wine, whether it's a Viognier. We really want it, we don't want it ice cold. We want it cool, but not cold. And the
I love that.
reds, a little bit, you take the temperature down a little bit. I once was able to influence a banquet house wine at Ritz-Carlton. They said, okay, you got to do a blind tasting with the rest of the executive staff. I'm like, I've got to let housekeeping pick my house wine. You know what that could do to my costs? So we tasted 6 wines blind, but one of them was slightly cool, the one I wanted.
Mm,
So
that's awesome.
kind of
You know,
stacked it up a little bit.
it's interesting too because again, there is this preconceived idea of how it's done, but then getting people the permission to try something different, try something a little bit outside the box, or it might be just a different way. And like I had a great tasting recently, and they were pairing the type of crackers they had were really simple, and then very simple fruit plate with the tasting, and I was just like, man, this is really good. And my friend was like, yeah, I try to keep, when he was the one running the tasting, he's like, I try to keep things really simple so that it cleanses the palate, but
Yep.
it's a fun light experience. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be so like intense, because he's like, there's a lot of intensity everywhere. So might as well just let the people have fun with it and enjoy it a little bit more. And that was wild because I didn't think about just, I compare it to cars and things like that. But going back to the car experience, one of my greatest experiences driving a car was when I just got that first car after I graduated from high school, that old beat up Subaru. And I was driving up the PCH from San Diego up to LA. And I had my window rolled down and the fresh air was coming in off the beach. And I had a cassette deck in there with the Top Gun soundtrack, and it's super awesome. Listening to was it Danger Zone or
I
Going
knew
in
you were going to say that.
Danger Zone, and I'm driving past the Miramar area up the coast of San Diego to LA, and the F-14s are flying overhead. It was one of the most magical experiences of my life.
As soon as you said Top Gun, I said, I know the song. I got pulled over. I got pulled over by a cop in his 20s. I was clocked in the 90s, listening to the 80s, and I didn't turn the music down. I was a smile as I wrote. He goes, would you please turn it down? I said, do you not know this song? Officer, this is a great song. He laughed. He goes, okay, you've already talked your way out of the ticket. Now turn it down a little bit. I said, I haven't heard this song since 1986.
That's awesome.
And I had the car vibrating with that song. That's a great driving song. So
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I love it. And one of the things that I think is really impressive with that is the fact that it's life. And, to me, in this time period where everything is so, we're getting all of these artificial experiences around us. To me, wine is still authentic. And
yeah.
it's one of the things that is something that people can still experience in a really beautiful way. And if you had to teach wine to a pure beginner to understand without using fancy words, how would you explain it?
Well, again, I would say start with different styles. First of all, take a step back. Don't be overwhelmed. It can be overwhelming. Take a step back, try a couple of different wines, try a red versus a white, and then see which way you kind of lean, and then try all the different, go through the little tree of varieties and understand there's going to be some that you like and there's going to be some that you won't. But the idea is, okay, if you didn't care for this one, there's 90,000 more to try. And that's
Yep.
just in Italy alone. So
Right.
we always are finding new grapes. I love one of the great things about teaching is we get to learn too. I
Yeah.
I'm doing a bunch of classes where I'm teaching grapes like Caracanti and Catarato that I had never really experienced. But once I started trying, I'm like, why am I not? I actually said this rhetorical question out loud to some staff members. I said, why am I not drinking more of this? He said, there's 24 hours in a day. How much more are you going to possibly?
Right. There's only
And
so
I
much
don't
time,
really,
man.
I'm not a heavy imbiber.
I,
I know there's just a certain limit, but it's the experience,
that's
and
it. I
communicating it
actually
to others.
every time someone talks to me and they realize they hear that I have a wine podcast, they're like, "Oh, you must have wine all the time." I was like, "Actually, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't drink a lot, but one of the things that I do is that, when I do, it's a beautiful time. It's a time with family, it's a time with friends, and it's something that brings us together in a way that not a lot can. And I want to ask you too, because like after all these years traveling and teaching, what still excites you about sharing wine with people?
Oh, first of all, what doesn't? I mean, I think Jimmy Buffett had the best job in the world. I don't think there's anybody who had a better job than Jimmy Buffett. Teaching wine, traveling, meeting new people of all experiences, brand new to Masters of Wine, the Institute of Masters of Wine. It's always a fun experience. It never gets old. It never gets boring. And somebody pointed out last night, they said, you teach that class and you were the only one in that room not trying the Grand Cru Champagnes. I said, well, I usually have to drive back to a hotel, but it's more fun for me just watching everybody try different wine. They may never have had a rosé before champagne, and they may never known the grapes of Pinot Noir can also make a white wine. So we talked about all those fun things. Just seeing people get it and knowing when they leave, they're going to try new experiences and new foods because we put a lot of food pairing in there too, and mostly to get them comfortable. So
Oh,
the key
I
word is,
love that.
and our first slide is enjoyment. That's what it's
I love
all
that.
about. It's about enjoyment, about sharing and talking about it. So
I love that. One of the things too, I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite wine that you love to drink right now?
an open one. So, favorite wine right now. Like everybody else, I go through different phases. Right now, I am teaching classes on the Rhone Valley. And so I'm doing a lot of northern and southern Rhones. And I honestly believe a wine like Viognier is just an amazing white wine. And it's towards my style. I like big, rich, full bodied whites, not overly oaky, but a lot of fruit and power and flavor to it. Just not too acidic, great with a wide variety of foods. That's today. Tomorrow it might be something totally different, a Tempranillo, or once I try Spanish wines, I dive into that rabbit hole. Sicilian wines, a good narrow Davila could really make a meal, and then sharing it with others. But I like when people share wine with me.
Yeah.
My staff, they constantly, I don't know where they're finding these new wines, but they're like, try this. And like, wow, we just go right back to the basics and just enjoy it.
If you were to pour 3 glasses for me right now, without knowing my preferences, what would you pour me?
Oh God, that's a good question. I would pour a medium bodied white, maybe a Chenin Blanc, just to see how you would react to it. Maybe a light bodied red, maybe such as a Pinot Noir, and then maybe something a little bit fuller bodied red, just to try the light versus the full. Maybe a Ribera del Duero wine. See if you like the big, inky, black, full flavored, full bodied, bombastic, or maybe the softer, more austere, slightly more acidic red wine like a Sangiovese. See which way your palate leans, and then kind of go from there. So,
I love that. I love that. Well, where can people go to find out more about you and what you do?
well, I'm in a lot of retail stores. They can go to the Adventure Wine website. They can always drop me notes. It's a very easy address, robert@adventurewine.com. I answer questions all the time. I'm on the road constantly. I'm on the road right now, and I'm going to be heading on the road once we finish this. So more
That's
classes.
awesome.
So
That's awesome.
great. It's great just sharing it with people.